All right, good morning, folks. I just want to do a quick little introduction to this video. Um, I mentioned in one of my other videos that I like to connect with Mother Nature. That, that I consider the most important or the most powerful force on Earth. So when I work with the seasons, it really, really helps me to be connected to Earth, to the changing seasons, to what should I be doing, what's important to me to do throughout the year. I'm not strictly a summer person at all. So, when it comes winter is really one of my most active times of the year. And during the planting season, right now in the garden, it's really important that starting like Memorial Day, end of May, after frost, the threat of frost is over, hopefully, um, that I really need to get my garden in the ground. And my internal clock knows this. And I just really work with it. And it takes me at least 2 weeks to get my real initial garden set in. And then it continues on for a little bit more time than that. And then I start harvesting some of my lettuce and start planting some of my fall crops. So working with Mother Nature and the seasons really helped me stay connected to Earth. All right, enjoy the video. So I want to do a little video about how I got started gardening. And here it is. This is my porch. This is where I got started. Somewheres I learned that if you make your environment better, it'll make you feel better. And I knew if I had some buckets with tomatoes growing in them, it would make my porch a better environment. So I got 7 buckets, filled them with dirt, and I had 7 sun gold tomatoes, little yellow cherry tomatoes, on my porch. And every time I went inside or out, every time I went by them and I could eat them, it made me feel better. It made me feel good to grow them and have them and take care of them. And so that's how I got started. And then, I don't know, it was that same year or the year after, I built this little raised bed. And I put that fence in between the guide wire and the telephone pole there. I doubled it up, made it go way up there, because I planted sugar snap peas in there. Those are the kind of peas that you can eat the whole pod raw, and I really, really, really like those. I eat every one of them right off the vine, fresh. They don't go inside at all. And this year I planted it with peas, but the peas didn't do good, and I don't know. The chipmunks ate the seeds. What happened to them? So I replanted it with pole beans, which is a green bean, only they grow on vines instead of bush, and they're just starting to come up. I got those little rods in there to keep cat from using it as a litter box and digging up my seeds. So that was the second thing I did. And right now I'm standing on my sidewalk, and every time I go by and I pick some beans and I eat them, I feel good. And it's just something I do to extend the list of things that make me feel good when I do it. And the more time you spend doing things you like, the better you feel. The better you feel, the less time you're dealing with depression. So that's that was the second thing I did. And then after, I think just a couple years, I don't really remember how many years it was, I branched out from my porch down here to my front yard. That's my driveway. And so every time I come home, first thing that greets me is my garden. And I get out of my car and walk my garden first thing before I even go in the house. And it's right here in the front yard. And when I started, I really wasn't sure if I was going to stick with it or not. So my idea was I dug these holes, and I'll show you later with a post hole digger. I dug these holes and planted tomatoes right in my yard. Nice line, every 4 feet apart. That's how far you're supposed to plant them. And I asked around to some farmers. I asked a cooperative extension what they thought about the idea, and nobody really could give me any idea because nobody had heard such a thing. But so I tried it, and it works for me, and I get nice tomatoes, and that's how I do it. Then after I planted the tomatoes, I realized I had plenty of room in between, and I put a bucket in between each tomato plant. And right now on this line, this row right here, mostly I have tomatoes and peppers. So I have a tomato plant, a pepper plant, tomato plant, an eggplant, tomato plant, pepper plant, tomato plant, eggplant. You get the idea, right? And that's what I got in this row. I really like eggplants. They're one of my favorite foods. And you can see on top of the cages on my tomatoes, I use a cage and I use a stake, and keep them up real good, and they really get a big bush of tomatoes there. And after a couple years, one thing I never really enjoyed doing with my garden was watering it. It seemed like I was always out here at night and it'd be hot, and usually I was behind on watering and all that. So I invested in this overhead drip irrigation, that black pipe. And off of the black pipe goes a drip tube, they call it, and it goes down to each plant. Each plant's got a drip tube, and I can water my whole garden at one time. I got a timer that I can set. I just hook it up the garden hose to it, and I can water my whole garden at once, and it works really good like that. This is my second row, and what do I got going in here? It looks like mostly peppers and tomatoes. That's all I got in this row here. I've put my stakes out. I got those placed out. I'll eventually stick them in the ground and tape them to the water pipe for the tomatoes to grow up and just help make the whole structure sturdier. So that's my second row. One thing I'll show you down here, one thing I like to do, making my garden pretty is really important to me. I like it to be visually pleasurable, really important to me. So at the end of each row, I put what I call a statement plant, and this is a dwarf sunflower. I never had sunflowers before, and so this year I'll have one at the end of each row. This row, I'm extending it, so I did have all buckets here, but now where there were buckets, every other bucket now, I'm digging it out to put a few more tomato plants. And I'll do the same thing over there at the end of the third row. That's my trellis. I really like growing vertically. I have plenty of space here, but I like to, I don't know, it just works for me to grow vertically. And that's all my cucumbers. Some years I grow beans out there, rotate my crop a little bit. But most years I grow cucumbers. I grow Herbie cucumbers, pickling cucumbers, and burpless cucumbers. So one thing that's really important that I had to learn is I didn't buy all this equipment in 1 year and get to where I'm at in 1 year. It took, 3-4 years to get close to where I'm at. And this year I had to buy more tomato cages because I was just doing things a little different and expanding things. And the drip irrigation system, that was a considerable investment. So it just didn't happen overnight. And that was one of the most important things that I can learn about recovery. It didn't happen overnight. I used to think it was. I used to tell my psychiatrist, my brain is broke, I live in a fog, and I want you to fix it, which meant give me the right pill. And it just doesn't work that way. When you get a broken leg, they x-ray it, they put it in a cast, you wait 6 to 8 weeks, they take the cast off, maybe you get some rehab, and your leg is fixed. And that's great. That's how recovery works from a broken bone. But recovery from mental illness and recovery to mental health takes time. And I had to, just like the garden, I had to learn skills that I didn't have. I wasn't born knowing how to garden. I had to, learn skills. I had to practice the skills. I had to get a lot of experience, and it took a lot of time. And the same thing with recovery. I had to learn skills, I had to practice them, and I had to do them for a long time to get me where I'm at with my mental health. So I just want to leave you with that. It doesn't happen overnight. Last video I did was I talked a lot about principles. And one of the most important principles is when you plant a seed, when you have a garden, you really expect it to grow. I really hope at the end of the year that this garden is going to be what I want it to be. And it's the same thing with recovery, is you got to have hope. If I didn't have any hope for this garden, I wouldn't be out here doing it. But I do have hope for this garden. The same thing with my recovery. I have a lot of hope for my recovery, and I'm out here doing everything that I can figure out how to do, putting in the time, the effort, and the experience to improve my mental health. All right, so I hope you can learn something about gardening, learn something about recovery to mental health, and get out there and do it. All right, till next time.